Hello. Oh, need some light here.
Hello, Ron. How are you doing?
Oh, good. How are you? We get some light from our crazy setup here. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you. We've been super busy
Thank
this
you for the
time of
book.
year.
Yeah, you see here. Here's the book. Thank you very much.
All right,
Yeah.
great.
Here you go.
It won't show up.
There it is.
It's invisible.
It's invisible. Funny. Let's see if I can fix this. Yeah, we'll see if we can find people to attend the boot camp. We can't because we're trying to move.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure. Nice. Yeah, I still have a few spots for people. So I just
Now,
thought
Holly did take the job at Northwest Nazarene University,
uh-huh.
and she's starting next month, so we got to get up there.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Okay, good. Sounds pretty great.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
Yeah.
Then we've got to figure out how to mow
Our field.
our field, and we don't want to buy a tractor; they're expensive. We'll need a pickup truck eventually, and these things start to add up. So in Idaho, side by sides are street legal, and you can pull a mower behind them.
Nice.
I'm wondering if that would be a nice fix, and you can put a snowplow on it.
Right. Yeah, yeah. For sure.
I know Jared has one. You guys do you have one too? I know Jared, right?
Yeah, Jared.
He has a side by side.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got one and he's got one. They're pretty useful on a piece of land. We use side by sides all the time. They're a good piece of equipment to have. They can be expensive too, but everything adds up, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's good to be able to get around. That's important.
Mm-hmm. So we've got good neighbors. Our one neighbor's mowed our 5 acres for us. Well, we started before we left, and he was nice enough to do that.
Nice.
Can't be relying on neighbors all the time.
Sure. Yeah. Right. So what kind of plants are coming up and growing there? I know what we've talked about.
Holly's got a list. Holly has a list.
Well, we haven't planted anything because we haven't been there to water anything.
Right, sure.
So I did take photographs of all the different plants I could find as we walked around on the property.
Perfect.
To see what we had. So we have 3 types of, well, mostly what we have is tumbleweed.
Okay.
And then we have 3 types of clover, but there's not very many, just a few here and there.
Uh-huh.
There's we found 2 plants of alfalfa, but that's all, just 2 plants. And then okay. We found, I'm trying to find my list. Oh, here's the list. Flicksweed, Scotch thistle, but there's only like 9 of those.
Okay.
Clasping pepperweed. The clovers we have are yellow sweet clover, white sweet clover. I don't know where the other one is. We have Matt amaranth, common mallow, common purslane, livid amaranth, summer cypress, red root pigweed, great brome. There's lots of that.
Okay.
Like I say, we found 2 alfalfa total. There's a Siberian elm, just a little tiny starting of a sapling. There's a little bit of rye, cereal rye, field bindweed, yellow salsify, prickly lettuce, and red stem stork's bill.
All right.
Oh, and heat grass. Oh, wait. Jim Hill mustard. There we go. That's the list.
That's good. Sounds like you've been doing your research. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, good. So the best thing you can do to manage that is to mow it before the seeds ripen. So, different species are going to ripen at different times. So you want to mow before they ripen. So you want the seeds to be big, like the seed heads, the stalks to get big. So you grow a lot of biomass. Just so what that means is the plant gets big. Right. And then you mow it down and it knocks it back, but that all that plant material goes down and hits the ground. and then the ground is being fed. The microbes are getting fed. It's covering the ground. It's cooling the ground. It's holding moisture in. So you're getting all of those benefits, but you're not growing a lot of weed seeds. How many thistles did you say you had? Was it 9?
A total of 9 is all I found.
Yeah.
In one corner of the pasture.
Okay. Yeah. You want to cut those down before they go to seed for sure.
Yeah. I don't think they went to seed yet. He mowed while we were like 2 weeks ago. He mowed. So
perfect. Good. Yeah, that's good because you want to mow them down. So here's what happens to a thistle when you mow it down. If it has 1 seed head going up, it'll sprout 5 more around the bottom when you mow it. So this summer, you need to keep track of that. And you can just, I mean, it's only 9 plants. So go out there, next time you get up there, go out there with your shovel and cut those off. Now, if the seeds are coming out, so they're going to be like, you know how a dandelion seed, you can blow. Kids blow on it. It has that fluffy stuff. Well, thistles are going to be kind of a fluffy thing. If it's at that stage, then those seeds are viable and you'll be planting thousands of seeds there. So you can just take a bucket or something and cut those off with if you have a really sturdy pair of scissors or a sharp knife, you're going to need a pair of gloves. And then you just cut those heads off that have the viable seed in them, and then just put them in the trash can. Send them to the landfill. Okay.
Yeah.
And then they'll just get buried and they won't cause a problem.
Yeah.
So
we also have goat heads, but I don't see them in my pictures. I don't know why not, because we have a bunch of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And they're harder to control because they're very low to the ground. You know, they just they don't even get 3 inches tall usually. And so they're a little harder to control.
So when we plant our multiple types of pasture seed, once it starts raining this fall, will it choke out the goat heads?
That is the hope. Yes. When you start covering the ground so that when you walk out there and you look straight down and you don't see any soil, those super early succession plants will start going away. So that means your detritus sphere on top, which is your dead plant material, it should be 2 or 3 inches on there. So by mowing this year, you're starting to add that to the soil, which is fantastic. See, the traditional thing in years past has been to till it. And so every time there's weeds, we till it to kill the weeds, but it doesn't really do as good a job in the long run as just changing the ecological succession to where we cover the ground and then we keep it covered. And then the mid-succession plants will start growing, which are things we want.
Right.
And so the thistles, the bindweeds, the goat heads tend to go away. I mean, you'll have a few, but you won't have them, like tons of them. Also, the what was that first one you said? The tumbleweeds. The tumbleweeds
we got
tend to go away too. See, these are all plants that will germinate and grow on bare ground really well.
Right.
But once you get the ground covered, and this could be a 3 or 4 year process to get a good detritus sphere out there. But by growing those weeds this year, it's fantastic if you can just keep mowing them down. You know, so you're going to mow 4 or 5 times this summer, you know.
Right.
So that's
perfect.
That is the good thing to do. Right. You're on a good trajectory to make that soil perfectly what you want.
Great.
Good news.
All right. What other questions do we have? John, you always have a question. What's your question tonight? John, I can't hear you. Are you muted? You are muted.
We're muted.
There you go. Hello, Melanie and John.
Yeah. How much fish fertilizer should we give each plant? You know, they say fertilize. Give it fish fertilizer.
So just follow the directions on the bottle of whatever product you purchase. See, I can't tell you how much to give you because when you go buy fertilizer, it's going to be in different concentrations. So you have to follow the directions on the bottle. Okay. And now, if you just go to the lake and catch a fish, and then you put the fish in a blender and you're making your own fish fertilizer, then I can tell you. But I don't think you're doing that, are you, Melanie?
Okay. So if you go fishing, how much do you put in then?
So I would put like one fish in a blender and then you fill the blender up with water and you turn that blender on, and it's going to have to be a powerful blender to deal with the bones, like a Vitamix or a Ninja or just a high quality blender. If you use a cheap blender from Walmart, it will last for 5 fish. And it will burn it up. It's not made for that heavy work. So you'd blend that up until it's completely pulverized. And so it's a liquid. And then you would mix about probably, maybe a quarter of a cup in a gallon of water. So dilute a quarter of a cup of that fish slurry in a gallon of water. So, like, let's say you put a half a gallon in that blender. That's going to make you probably 10 gallons so 2 5-gallon buckets worth of a nutrient to go around your plants. And it's going to smell like a fish, and it will attract predators that are trying to eat the fish. So cats and skunks and rats and badgers, all these creatures are going to come in and start digging up your garden looking for the dead animal to eat. So it's not always the best idea unless you have a really good fence. But
so is it a raw fish?
Yeah, just a fish that you catch from the stream.
That's good.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that.
But I don't think you guys are going to do this. You're just humoring me to see what I'll say.
Well, I was just thinking when you were talking about that, about Ed Dufresne's pond.
Oh.
Yes.
Did you ever go fish there?
I never did. We always had all our own ponds out there that we were fishing in, but
it was full of garbage fish. What do you call them?
I don't know, but it had fertilizer runoff in the pond.
Yeah, but anyway, I had a question, and maybe you've already answered it. What did you do these last 2 weeks?
Oh yeah, so I was in southern Utah at Monticello College. I was teaching a soil health seminar for 9 days to their students, and then they had extra people that they brought in.
Wow.
So it was a smaller group. It was about 40 people that were there, but it was pretty fun. It was a small enough group that we got to know each other pretty good, a big enough group to make it worth it. And it was fun. We just went through the tests and tools that are in my book. We talked about the important organism groups that you need in the soil spheres, the ecological literacy. That's how I started my speech. I got up there and said, the biggest problem with our world the educated world is ecologically illiterate.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked about how to become literate. So I don't know if that is the biggest problem in the world, but it's one of them. I mean, you look at the environmental movement, and it's interesting what the environmental movement is trying to do. They're trying to save the earth, but I haven't really heard a good plan for that from the environmental movement, because they too are ecologically illiterate. They don't really know how it works. I mean, maybe somebody does that's in that movement, but I've never heard them give a speech or read their scientific paper. Most of them just like to hold picket signs and cause a ruckus on election year. I don't know. No, somebody needs to actually be out there on the land making it happen. Okay, see this picture here? I'll move myself. So these fields out here used to be sagebrush.
Wow.
And by moving cattle properly, we have turned a lot of these fields into grasslands now.
It's marvelous.
And so what we do, we will take the cattle, So we have cowboys. They move the cattle into a field, a big bunch of cattle, like 500 or 900 cows. We'll move them into a great big field when the grass seeds are ripe, meaning they're viable, meaning that if you plant them, they will grow. So we move the cows into a small portion of that field. Let's say 500 cows on 5 acres. It's a very small place, but they're there for a matter of hours, like 5 hours. They're grazing, they eat, they fill up their bellies with all of that fodder, and that fodder is filled with viable grass seed. And then the cowboys move the cows a mile or 2 away out into the sagebrush where there is no grass and lots of bare dirt. And bare dirt is a problem. That's what causes droughts, because the sun hits it, the hot air rises, creates a high pressure. When a cloud comes along, it pushes it on somewhere else. So we move those cows onto the bare dirt. We leave the cows there for 5 or 6 hours, and they poop and pee everywhere. And guess what's in their poop? It's all of those seed heads. And then we move the cows off of that. They go to a new place to eat. Now, on that area where those cows pooped, on that bare ground, we don't take the cows back there until the grass is growing. Okay? That means about 2 to 3 years sometimes a 1.5 years, usually a couple of years. And because if cows go back there again, they'll step on all the cow pies and break them up, and then the grass doesn't grow. So here's what I'm telling you. If a cow poops on bare ground in the desert, and that poop is full of seeds, 60% of those cow pies will grow grass if you don't destroy the cow pie. Okay? Now, if the cow pie just mummifies and dries up and turns into a fossil, it's not going to grow grass, but it will decompose. So you want all the bugs you can get out there. You want dung beetles. You want all kinds of flora and fauna out there in the desert. They will take those cow pies and they will eat them. The earthworms will incorporate it into the ground. And so in 3 or 4 months, you go out there and you don't see the cow pies. But the earthworms and all the other bugs have taken those seeds and put them into the ground down deep where it's moist, because everybody knows that in a desert, the ground dries out. But we have flagged quite a few cow pies over the years. Just those little construction flags, that are just a wire that's like 2 feet long with a little flag. People use them in their yards sometimes, construction people use them. We've flagged a lot of cow pies. And what we found is that 60% of the cow pies on well-managed land will grow grass. And so
without irrigation.
You don't need irrigation if you use a climate-appropriate species. So in the western U.S., there's a giant grass here. I have pictures. I need to get pictures and show you guys, but I can't do it right now. But we took a picture this week of a grass that was 8 feet tall. I'm standing by it I'm not on my tippy toes, but I'm just standing flat-footed. I'm reaching up as high as I can reach in the air, and the top of that grass is taller than my hand. And so that's around 7 feet. But then day before yesterday, we found another one, and it was even taller. I think it was pushing 8 feet, and it's called Great Basin Wild Rye. So it's just a perennial, cool season grass that grows here in the springtime, and they're seeding out at this time of year in our climate. But remember the pioneer stories and historical stories of the American West, and they would tell stories of if you got off your horse, you would be lost on the prairie because the grass was so tall. And there's a lot of old accounts of that, and it's very interesting. And there's old stories. I think like people who read Louis L'Amour, he writes about it, and there's just old pioneer stories from the Gold Rush and the Oregon Trail and the Mormon Trail, all the different settlers that came across the country. But we don't see that nowadays. And we don't see it because we have changed the ecosystem. And so anyway, it's fascinating. But when you manage the land in a way that lets the grass express its genetic capacity, that grass will grow in amazing ways. So, you know, and everybody like the government and all these other people have said overgrazing is a huge problem, get rid of cattle. But the quickest way to make a desert is to remove the cattle altogether. And I've already preached about that on this class so much that I shouldn't say it again, but I'm gonna because it's fun. And the example of that is the Navajo Indian Reservation. They were managing sheep for 400 years. They got them from the Spanish that came. They brought sheep in, and the Dene got those. The Dene and Navajo is the same thing, except the Dene is the proper way to say their name. And they, but yeah, if a civilization or a group of people, if they are managing something for 400 years, I'm pretty sure they know how to do it. And yet the U.S. government came in the 1930s and removed the sheep, and it was, you know, it's kind of a bad thing. But they removed them, and the Indian elders there, they said, if we don't have sheep on the land grazing, we can't grow grass. The grass only grows where the sheep graze. And but you know, they educated white people. I should say educated in air quotes because it was really an uneducated thing they did. But they said, oh, that's not true. The sheep are overgrazing and killing everything. Well, now the Navajo Indian Reservation is it's a dead grassland, which is a terrible thing. We see the same things in Arches National Park and Canyonlands National Park. A lot of the areas of Utah where we've completely removed the grazers, we created a desert, but we didn't know what we were doing. You know, we didn't have the ecological literacy that we have now. And most people managing those places still don't have it because this information hasn't made it into academia, which is too bad. But yeah, so I don't even know what I'm talking about, but it sure is fun to talk about it.
Well, we should write a paper and publish it.
All right, John.
Journal.
Me and you, let's do it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kind. We could document every bit of this. I mean, because I didn't make it up. It's just stuff I've read over the years. If you want to read about that, look up. So the author would be Alan Savory and Jody Butterfield. Those are the authors. And the title of the book is Holistic Management. And that's a good place to start. But there's just a lot of people nowadays who they're actually doing this stuff and they're showing that it works. So the case studies are in. You know, if you go to Understanding Ag's website, you can see a bunch of their case studies. Alejandro Carrillo is in the Chihuahuan Desert, and he manages a 30,000 acre ranch, and he has covered it with grass by managing the cattle properly.
Wow.
So when the environmental movement says, oh, get rid of livestock, that will, if they actually did get rid of the grazers of the earth in massive amounts, that would desertify the earth faster than anything else, which creates warmer temperatures. So if they're trying to stop global warming, which is a buzzword, I hate buzzwords, yeah. but that would create that condition faster than anything else.
Well, it's kind of like California getting rid of their plastics in the grocery store. You can't have a plastic bag, but everything you buy is in plastic bags now instead of boxes.
Yeah, that's kind of funny.
So we're actually giving more plastic to the ocean.
Yeah, it's a weird world.
They're uneducated, just like you said.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any more questions tonight?
We have an area that still doesn't have irrigation on it.
Okay.
I'm wondering if there are something that we could put there. I guess probably not, is there, without water? There's nothing that we can, seeds or something that we can plant for now to
So you're wanting to plant it right now in the middle of July,
or something. You know, just because it's barren dirt. I mean, it does well. It's not barren. It has weeds on it. It does have all these lovely weeds that.
Well, that's fantastic. Weeds are our friends. You got to remember that weeds are our friends. Weeds are the first responders. When there's a great big accident on the freeway and there's a 30-car pileup, you have highway patrolmen, you have the county sheriff, you have the big red fire engine show up, you have the ambulance. We call these people and cars and trucks and helicopters the first responders. When there is an ecological disaster, the first responders are your weeds. The weeds show up, they will grow, they will cover the ground. Because if you cover the ground, you stop all of the problems that are going to happen. Covering the ground enhances the water cycle, the mineral cycle, your ecological succession, and your the sun flow cycle, the energy flow. And that's what you have to do. You have to help everyone.
Just leave them, just cut them off.
Mow them. Just mow them and keep them growing.
Well, we can't mow because it's on a slope, but we can use the weed eater.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Fantastic.
And then what month would be advisable then to put some seeds in there?
Probably. Are you ever going to get irrigation water, or are you relying on?
Yeah, eventually. We've asked. The guy's supposed to come back. He hasn't even responded.
Okay.
So who knows?
Yeah. Okay.
Next spring.
So this fall, plant a bunch of wheat and oats and rye and barley.
What did you buy?
And kale and collards out there in the fall. So that means September.
Without water to it.
Yeah. So, and as soon as and if you can get it under the soil a little bit, that's great. Like if you
what did you buy?
Like poke some holes or something.
What did you buy? What seeds?
So I bought buckwheat.
It's a summer crop, but it has to have water.
Oh. Okay.
So it would be fantastic anywhere where you can water, but it wants warm weather. You could plant it now. It would do fine if you have water. But if you don't have water and you plant it now, it's not going to sprout. It's going to wait till next summer, and it will sprout once it has water.
Okay.
So
but if you plant those grasses I just told you, the wheat, triticale, you plant those in the fall, then the rain that comes in the fall will start to grow those. So that's what
was wheat, barley,
oats. Barley, oats, triticale,
and
rye.
Excuse me.
And then if there's a famine, you can make a multi-grained bread.
Yeah. And then you mentioned not Swiss chard, kale.
Kale and collards.
Collard greens. Yeah. Okay. Just scatter the seeds.
Yeah. All right. The birds are going to eat them. So if you can cover them with a little something, that's a good idea. Or just,
it's okay. The birds can have it too. We'll plant enough that the birds can eat it.
You're going to share. That's very kind of you. You have a big bird.
Well, it's nice to have birds in your yard because they're part of the ecology system too.
That's right.
I don't know what they eat, but besides our plants, our cherries, few cherries that we have growing on our Montmorency cherry tree.
Yeah, nice. All right, Ron, Holly, do you have any more questions for tonight before we close down shop?
What time of year should we be trying to find and plant trees on our property? We don't have any trees. I want to eventually have some fruit trees and some shade trees and some nut trees. We went to the local nursery and talked to him about what kinds of things he has on hand to find out what species grow there. So we did talk to him about that. But we had heard that you don't actually plant the trees until like winter. Is that your recommendation too?
Yeah, that's a good idea. If the trees are in a pot, you can usually plant them any time of year and be okay. But if it's extra hot in the summer, it can stress them pretty bad. So it's better to wait until the fall. So you can get away with it if you can take care of them really good, but it's a lot safer to keep those trees alive if the leaves are not on the tree. So in the fall, after the leaves fall off, and anytime through the fall is a good time. And then in the spring, before the leaves start to sprout, is a good time. Quite often planting them in the winter, that can be a little bit risky too, just because if the ground's freezing too much, there can be some issues. So fall and spring is the best time, when the leaves of the trees are not present.
Okay.
And if they're bare root, meaning they're not in a pot, then really your only option is fall or spring. But yeah.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
All
right. It's been fun. I'll be back next week, same time.
Where do they live?
Ron and Holly. They're talking about a property in Idaho.
Oh, it's in Idaho. It sounds like Utah. Almost the same.
Idaho.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's Payette, Idaho, so almost Oregon, right on the border.
Yeah. In the desert.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're dealing with pretty much what we have too. So this was very good to ask these questions, because I was all ears.
Okay, nice. Okay,
all right.
Next week,
Sounds
same
good.
time, same place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Good night.